Hello, welcome to the Healthy Alternatives podcast. I am Dr. Christine Sauer with DocChristine.com. Today's show is a recording of my radio show of the same name. Enjoy! Okay. Good afternoon, this is Dr. Christine Sauer, your host of the show Healthy Alternatives here on 97.5 CIOE FM with live stream on communityradio.ca every Thursday at 12 noon Atlantic Standard Time. Thanks for tuning in today. In this show, I will talk mostly with guests about all aspects of health, healthcare and wellness, from conventional to alternative and everything in between. My mission for this radio show is to help change people's lives for the better by informing them about different options to get and stay healthy and well so they can choose for themselves which option might work in their case. And if you feel you're stuck in a dark place, I want to tell you, don't give up. There is a light at the end of the tunnel for you too. Today, I'm extremely pleased to be with Abe Camargue, founder and owner of True Made Foods and a health and nutrition enthusiast. Welcome to the show, Abe.
Hi, Dr. Steve. Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure, and I'm happy to see you. Where are you located?
I'm in Alexandria, Virginia, just outside of Washington, D.C.
Beautiful. How is the weather today?
Weather's gorgeous here. So very
lovely,
lucky.
Lovely. Now, I know you have a very interesting history. Tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah, so it's been a long route to get me where I am today. I started out, I was a Navy helicopter pilot for 8 years, just over 8 years. I served all around the world, multiple different countries. I was in the Iraq War, and then served in England afterwards for my shore duty, where I worked in counterterrorism for years, and also was able to earn my MBA from the London Business School.
Wow.
That got me excited about business and seeing what else I could do in the world. And basically, while I was, traveling around places in Europe and Africa for work and doing my MBA, I realized that, I joined the military to kind of have a positive impact. I wanted to do something with my life, wanted to do something in the world, and I started to see that, maybe through business I could do more. So I left the military in 2008, which was a terrible time to leave the military.
Yeah.
Very bad decision, especially in London, which was like the epicenter of the financial crisis. And nobody was hiring, and even with an MBA, I was pretty much useless out there. So I focused on emerging economies and impact entrepreneurship to try to find a way and find a career out of it. My wife and I, at the time, we were both in London. We just had our first kid. We were pregnant with the second. We both had grad school loans, and so it was quite the crisis for us, especially with the pound being 2-to-1 against the dollar at the time. But luckily, I was able to find some work. I actually ended up moving away from my family to Bulgaria and flipped a plastics factory there.
Wow.
That's my first opportunity. I just had to take whatever I could find. And then my wife and I together, with our family, we moved to the Middle East, and we lived in the Middle East for 3 years.
Wow, where did you live down there?
We lived in Doha, Qatar.
Wow. It's supposed to be a very nice place.
It was interesting. It was very interesting. We enjoyed it. It was a good experience for sure. Yeah. But we were also happy to leave. We have still some great friends there. But I was able to start a business there, and that was very interesting. I got to travel all over the Middle East. I worked on some agriculture projects. Worked on some really impact projects trying to help the migrant workers, and worked on some startup projects there too. Got to experience the Arab Spring firsthand. And as a lot of my friends in the entrepreneurial communities in the Middle East were involved in Egypt and in Lebanon and Syria. Then we moved back to the U.S. in 2013, and that actually got me into food, which was we moved back to the Washington, D.C. area for my wife's job, and I was hired by a charity here called Coexist, the Coexist Foundation.
Oh, yeah.
And they were looking for an entrepreneur who who had worked in post-conflict areas like I did, to help them launch products underneath the Coexist name. You probably don't know this, but the Coexist bumper sticker has absolutely nothing to do with the actual charity or the charity that was around.
Oh, wow.
It was a completely viral, separate thing. And so this a guy who got put in charge of the charity back in like 2012, he decided he wanted to try to, get the charity monetizing, this name and the fact that everybody knew the bumper sticker. So he wanted to create new products under the Coexist name. And so he hired me to help him develop things like coffee, T-shirts, stuff like that.
Right.
So I focused on the coffee, and that kind of got me into the food industry. We launched a coffee called Coexist Coffee that I sourced out of eastern Uganda that came from a Jewish, Muslim, and Christian farmers. So that was a very exciting time, and it got me really, I've always been a big foodie, always really been into health and wellness. I think earlier than most people, I learned to cook very early as a child, helping out with my mom in the kitchen, and having an Italian mother and having to, we always cooked with real ingredients. We never used sugar, had very little processed food in the house. My parents didn't own a microwave until I was in my 20s.
Wow. And you're a young guy, so that wasn't when microwaves were not around yet.
Yeah. No, it's not. They were definitely around. I'm not that old. But we didn't have a microwave for a long time because they kind of held out to wanted to be real cooks. And so we learned always in my family to cook as much as we can, make your own sauces, make your own dressings, make everything yourself. And so, learning about launching the coffee kind of introduced me to the corporate world of food and beverage and showed me how much easier it's become to launch a food product these days because there's, you can outsource so much of the manufacturing and the distribution and the sales team.
Yeah.
And that got me excited about what was happening. And so shortly after we launched the coffee, the charity actually ran out of money, and so they kind of let everybody go. And that left me, looking for something to do again. And, I just thought it was a sign of the time for me to do my own thing and really kind of launch a product and dive into something that I was really passionate about.
Yeah.
So we went after, so I decided to go after condiments. And the reason is because I've always hated ketchup, ironically. So True Made Foods, we make a healthy ketchup, barbecue sauce, and a sriracha. We make them healthy by reducing or eliminating the sugar completely and naturally sweetening the products with vegetables. So we use real whole pureed vegetables like carrots and butternut squash to naturally sweeten the product, minimally processed.
No, that sounds really exciting. How does it taste? Do your kids like it? I know you have kids.
Yeah. Well, that's the key point. I wouldn't try to sell it if my kids didn't eat it, right? So the best thing, I have 4 kids at home, and one of the reasons I went out decided to do ketchup.
When did you start having kids?
About 12 years ago, so when I was 30. Wow. So I've never wanted to have ketchup in my household. I always thought ketchup was a terrible thing. It's all sugar. Did you know, the average ketchup has more sugar than ice cream, ounce per ounce?
Kids tend to eat a lot of ketchup because of that.
Yeah, it's addicting, and unfortunately, children actually eat the most ketchup. And you might think that you're not eating. Oh, well, it's just a condiment. You're not eating that much of it. But ketchup actually, it sneaks up on you because it's so sugar dense. It's an average family that's going through maybe a bottle of ketchup a month is probably eating about 97 donuts worth of sugar a year.
Oh my goodness gracious!
Just through, it's almost it's a donut every other day, basically, almost every other day, based on just the sugar from this ketchup that they're going through.
So
ketchup,
you think
barbecue sauce.
They eat so much ketchup that the ketchup alone gets them a donut every second day.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
That's a good comparison. I like that. That's really a problem.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it too, if you look at a hamburger, the average hamburger bun has a lot of carbohydrates and, probably has refined flour, but it only has like maybe 1 to 2 grams of sugar. Nothing else in the burger should have sugar in it. And then the ketchup on it, if you put a tablespoon, which is 1 serving of ketchup, that's 4 grams of sugar right there.
Yeah.
So easily by weight, it's the most refined sugar that you're going to get through that entire meal. It's the worst part of the hamburger. It's usually the worst part of every meal. People don't even think about it. They think of it as, it's just ketchup, it's an add-on, or it's tomato. Typically, especially Heinz ketchup, the typical corn syrup ketchup, has more corn syrup in it than tomato.
Yeah, that's even worse than regular sugar. Now, what did you do when you had your ketchup? How did you formulate it? How long did it take you to make a formulation that actually your kids would eat and that tastes good and yet that you could market?
Oh, yeah, there was... well, what happened is I got lucky in a way in that I had a co-founder initially who told me about the idea of putting vegetables in ketchup. Because he had tried to do it, to hide veggies in his own ketchup. And he had failed miserably because he didn't know how to cook. And the product that he was making was terrible. But when he just gave me the concept, it immediately set off light bulbs for me, because I thought, I'd been cooking this way forever. Like, my mom taught me to cook pasta sauce by using carrots as a sweetener. So that's the way I always use carrots as a natural sweetener for things, and especially in sauces. And my wife and I used to get butternut squash all the time, and we'd bake it, puree it, and then freeze it, and then add the puree to different sauces or different meals just to hide some extra vegetables in for the kids. So I thought, if we were doing this and it's working at home really well, it's got to work. It could potentially work for some things like ketchup and barbecue sauce. And luckily it did. We didn't spend much time at the home kitchen because I had a concept that this was going to work. So we pushed right away to find a small co-packer. And I pushed right away to find a small co-packer, and then just experimented with that co-packer until we got the recipe that kind of worked. And that was good enough to launch with. And that was kind of the impetus. That
was the beginning, and that is so fascinating. And I'll let our listeners hang a little bit with that ending the first half of today's broadcast. And because I want to talk to you a little bit more about family health and what's wrong nowadays and how you can improve it with food and nutrition. And we'll talk about that some more in the second half. So please tune in after the commercial break for more about healthy food with Abe Kamarak. Hello and welcome back to Healthy Alternatives here on 97.5 CIOE FM or on the web at communityradio.ca. I'm your host, Dr. Christine Sauer, and today I'm talking with Abe Kamarak, founder and owner of True Meat Foods and a health and nutrition enthusiast. Welcome back, Abe.
Oh, thank you, Doctor. Appreciate it.
Now, it was great in the first half to talk with you about a little bit about your story and how you came up with the sugar-free ketchup that kids love. Now, why is it so important to you? Because I know family health is a big issue for you, having 4 kids yourself.
Yeah, it's a massive issue for me because you don't really see the problems out there until you start to have kids and start to run up against the challenges every day. I mean, when you're single or in your 20s, it's very easy to live a lifestyle, a wellness lifestyle, because you can very much control your environment most of the time. With children, it's a lot more difficult. You're constantly running into, every holiday seems to be built around candy. Birthday parties, restaurants. You go to, one of the reasons I focus on ketchup and barbecue sauce is we like going out to eat. We love going to barbecue. We love barbecue. Yeah. But you go out and the sauces, and it seems especially every kid's meal is built around ketchup. It's like every kid's meal you order at a restaurant, and besides being fried food, is built for them to put ketchup on it.
Sure. And they don't go a little bit on it. They take a lot.
Exactly. Yeah, you might think, ketchup is just a little bit. No, when you watch a kid eat it, they're pouring, half a plate of ketchup on there, and with every tablespoon being 4 grams of sugar, that's easily, so 3 tablespoons of ketchup, 3 servings is more sugar than a Krispy Kreme donut. Krispy Kreme donut has 10 to 11 grams of sugar.
Yes.
And you can easily get up there to even a soda level quickly if they're really consuming it.
And that often doesn't get noticed anywhere, that doesn't get mentioned anywhere. They just sell it because it sells. Right.
And, so food service is a real challenge. We're trying to break into food service, and it's harder. It's easier to get our products into retail stores.
Right.
The retailers are starting to see consumer behavior earlier change this way. Food service, restaurant owners, things like that, they don't see it right away, and they think, everybody likes Heinz, we'll just put Heinz out. And I think we need people to start complaining to restaurant owners about things like, what's on your menu, what products have sugar in them, and what kind of ketchup are you using, and if they have like a Heinz or a private label ketchup, which is going to be just as bad out there, you should complain to the manager and let them know that, I'm not going to trust what you're serving in the back of the house if you're putting on the front of the house,
right,
you're putting on the table this bad ketchup. So that's, I think that's important, that we need to start speaking up about these things. Food service, again, is always a real trap, something I worry about and I'm trying to get into, and why we're trying to get our sauces to food service is because, you order a meal and a lot of times you don't know what's been put in any of the sauces that's been added to it.
And it's kind of weird because there's different fad or craze diets. There was a low-fat diet that's on its way out. And now people want to go gluten-free and think that's healthy. But sugar is gluten-free, as we know. And they go dairy-free and think alternative milks is healthier and they are sweetened with sugar. What do you do about that?
There's all these traps. It's very frustrating working in the food industry now, especially in the natural space where I'm working with, I'm always going to trade shows with a lot of cutting edge companies, and not seeing the focus on sugar, and instead seeing everybody jumping on either a gluten-free bandwagon or a vegan bandwagon, which, there's nothing wrong with being vegan or gluten-free. It's just that if you are doing those diets and loading your diet with sugar or other processed foods or refined carbohydrates, then,
there's gluten-free junk, lots of it. There's vegan junk. Sugar's vegan.
Yeah, exactly. There's vegan stuff loaded with sugar. And so, this is a real problem. And we need to, I think we need to address that. And I think people need to focus on, there's really 3 things. If you go through all the literature on health and wellness, because there's a lot of, it can seem very confusing, but there's really 3 things in nutrition that are kind of the 3 truths that always come back to you that will always be bad for you. And that's, the first is, refined sugars, any type of refined sugar.
Especially high fructose, GMO, corn syrup and stuff like that.
Yeah, cane syrup, apple juice, orange juice, agave syrup, all of these things are refined sugars. And those things, you find this level where, and then the next is refined carbohydrates, any type of refined grain that's been, where they've taken out the wheat and the germ and the nutrition. Right. And, you're left with just the single molecule, just like with
then
the sugar.
They enhance this with a few vitamins, but there's nothing in it compared with the original.
Right. And you really have to wonder about the enhancements, too, if they actually work.
True.
There's a study recently that came out that was about comparing the processed food diet to a whole foods diet. And the study participants consume the exact same amount of fiber and protein and carbohydrates, but they consumed it through processed means. So, like, they would get artificial fiber, vice fiber from a carrot or from broccoli, and that and the processed food diet participants gained much more weight,
of course,
than the and actually gained weight and their IQ performed worse on the IQ tests after having these diets and things like this. Sure. While the whole foods diet participants actually increased and lost weight and increased their intellectual capabilities. so it's I
What's
think
the
really
third thing you wanted to mention?
Processed foods and refined carbohydrates, refined sugars that are the real problem that we're facing.
Yes.
That's why it's so important for me when we develop our products that, one, we're not using anything artificial, like no artificial sweeteners. The majority of no added sugar ketchups out there or barbecue sauces that we're competing with use sucralose, or which is the scientific name for Splenda, or some other type of artificial sweetener, or some other name for sugar, or another refined sweetener like stevia. It's very important for us to use a whole food, and so we use a pureed vegetable or a pureed apple. So it's like a pureed butternut squash.
And that contains all the goodness of the fruit
and
vegetable, and that is really amazing.
Yeah.
Now, I know you make ketchup and sriracha and barbecue sauce, but what do you do if your kids want a birthday cake? Just curious.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there are going to be times where you do this. And luckily, so I'm more of the cook in the family, and my wife is more the baker. She's learned to cook over the years. I have not learned to bake. I think it's like I'm too artistic to bake. My wife is the baker, and she does a pretty good job. And so what she has been doing, she does the same thing. Like, she tries to hide vegetables in her baking too. So she will zucchini. Obviously, everybody knows about zucchini bread, things like that. Yeah. But we'll do the same thing with butternut squash and with other winter and summer squashes, and try to hide, put them into bake them in. She'll typically, what she's also found doing early on is, she would take her mother's recipes, her mother's cookie and cake recipes, and she would just cut the sugar in half. And we found they tasted just as good. Like, there's a lot of excess sugar in a lot of our recipes developed, just guaranteed to try to make us use more. If you have a recipe, like a dessert recipe at home that has been passed down from your mom, or that you got online, just try cutting the sugar in half initially. See what happens. Try cutting it even further. I would just argue, just try experimenting and keep cutting the sugar. And
that works pretty good. And don't substitute it with honey, agave syrup, or anything else, because it's really not necessary.
Right, completely. I think you'll find that you can really get away with a lot with not having to use that.
And your children like that? They get used to it, I guess.
Yeah. No, our kids love it. So, I mean, every now and then we'll make something that they, will have a failure and the kids won't like it.
I think that's very important to encourage parents when their kids are small, to get them used to real cooking and not to junk.
Yep. I mean, it's very important. It's just...
Now, before we end the show, how can my listeners or listeners of the podcast version contact you?
Please go to truemadefoods.com and fill out our contact form there, or contact us on social media. On Instagram, we're at TrueMadeFoods. Please follow us on Instagram at TrueMadeFoods. Facebook, we're /TrueMadeFoods. You can find us on Amazon at Amazon.com/TrueMadeFoods as well. So if you search True Made Foods, you should be able to find us there.
That's really exciting. Because that is definitely interesting. I wouldn't mind tasting that ketchup myself. Well, thanks so much for being on today's show, Abe. It was a real pleasure to hear about how you add vegetables instead of sugar to improve your family health and others' health now too.
Thank you.
It was my pleasure to have you there, and this brings me to the end of today's show.
My pleasure. So happy to be on the show. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Abe. And please don't hesitate to contact me with any questions, thoughts, comments, or suggestions. Or if you'd like to contact me or Abe, forgot his website. My email here is christine@communityradio.ca, or contact me through my website, docchristine.com. And I'm always grateful for any feedback. I also want to extend a special thank you to today's producer, Cecil Wright. Thank you, Cecil. You're the best. You might not know this, but this is a volunteer-run non-profit radio station, and we even have an art gallery. If you're local and you'd like to drop in, we are at 11 Glendale Avenue, Lower Sackville, Nova Scotia. Thank you all for listening to Healthy Alternatives. I'm your host, Dr. Christine Sauer. Tune in next Thursday at noon on 97.5 CIOE-FM Community Radio with live stream on communityradio.ca for the next episode. Goodbye and have a great day.